What do you do when someone you trust becomes the greatest immediate danger to you? That is the dilemma that Travis Victor Alexander was sadly faced with on June 4th, 2008. Courtroom photos would eventually show the last tragic moments of the 30-year-old. With tears in his eyes and a look of betrayal on his face, the person he once trusted, his ex-girlfriend, Jodi Arias, was about to take his life. Hello, my name is Brittany, and welcome to Unmasking True Crime Misdeeds, a show where we look back on tragic moments in true crime to paint the scene in a different light. We try to remember that these people were more than just characters in a storybook. They were victims of unforgivably heinous acts. This one today has been highly publicized since it came to courts in late 2000s, so you've likely heard at least some of the story of the tragic passing of Travis Alexander at the hands of his ex-girlfriend, Jodi Arias. This one has a lot of details to cover, so we're going to go ahead and jump right on in. Travis Victor Alexander was born July 28, 1977 in Riverside, California. Travis's early childhood was not a typical one. He was born to parents who both struggled with drug addiction and he was abused. For some kids who have troubles at home, school can be a safe haven. For Travis, this wasn't the case. He was bullied and didn't have many friends. Eventually, though, he moved in with his grandmother to try to find his place in the world. As he reached adulthood, Travis had slowly pieced his life back together. He was working as a salesman and dabbled in stand-up comedy. He found his place at his local Latter-day Saints church and was turning his adult life into something young Travis would have seen as a bright light at the end of a dark tunnel. Unfortunately, and unknown to him at the time, that dark tunnel would come back into his life when, at work, he met Jodi Arias at a conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. The two met, and at first, it seemed like a match made in heaven. They hit it off, and soon they were in a long-distance relationship. Arias in California and Alexander in Arizona. Arias was even baptized as a member of the LDS Church. But soon, the red flags would start to show, and one of Alexander's friends showed concern when they would find him chopped up in the freezer. Though this wasn't exactly Travis's fate, it was still a haunting foreshadowing of what was to come. What started as a match made in heaven quickly turned into obsession. Arias would do things like follow Travis to the restroom and wait outside, or go through his social media accounts and emails. Arias felt possessive over Travis. Anyone else needed to know that he was hers and hers alone. After breaking up due to Travis's growing unhappiness with the relationship, the problems only seemed to get worse. Despite being broken up, Arias moved to Mesa, Arizona, the town where Travis shared a home with a roommate and friend. Arias would show up unannounced and sometimes going as far as to crawl through the dog door to get inside the house. As soon as Travis began seeing other women, Arias grew increasingly volatile. After a couple of months of doing things like slashing Travis's tires and harassing the woman whom he was now seeing steadily, Arias suddenly vanished. All right, guys, let's pause here for a second and take a break because I would like to share with you my thoughts on obsession and toxic relationships. Red flags are to be taken seriously in relationships. As we all know, toxic relationships can have severe consequences for the emotional and well-being of the individuals involved. The relationship between Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander is a tragic and high-profile example of the toxic and ultimately deadly dynamic. There were several red flags in their relationship, indicating its unhealthy nature, such as lies, deception, emotional manipulation, physical violence, lack of boundaries, cycle of breakup and reconciliations, threats, and violence escalation. Seeking help and support from family and friends and professionals is crucial if you guys ever find yourself in this situation. Tragically, in the case of Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander, the toxic dynamic led to a heartbreaking loss of life. So Travis was supposed to be in Cancun, Mexico for a work-related trip in early June. However, his friends and coworkers had not heard from him in nearly a week, and those concerns that they had voiced to Travis many times began creeping back. Mimi, the woman he had been dating and was supposed to bring to Cancun with him, went to Travis's house. Travis's roommate, Zach, seemed confused when Mimi asked where Travis was. Zach thought that Travis was in Mexico already. He went to check Travis's room and was appalled by what awaited him on the other side of the door. Travis's body was found in the shower, and I'll spare you the gruesome details, but the detective made it clear that this was one of the most unpleasant scenes that he had ever seen. Immediately, it was clear that this attack was personal, and it was angry. Someone wanted to make sure that he was unalived, the detective had said. Immediately, Travis's friends began to suspect Jodi Arias as the culprit. According to the detective heading the case, Arias had contacted the police within just a few hours of the case opening to ask about it. She was asked to be fingerprinted, and she agreed. Prints at the crime scene found in the shower came back as matches with both Travis's DNA and hers. Even before this, the police already had Jodi atop the suspect list before this. Within a month's time, the police had her in custody. At first, Arias denied more. She swore up and down that she had not been anywhere near Travis's house at the time of the crime. However, police found a camera in the washing machine inside the house and recovered the photographs that were taken on it. This camera had some of the most disturbing photos on it, showing Travis's final horrific moments. Some of the photos also place Arias at the crime of the scene. Even when questioned about her presence at the house with pictures proving that she was there, Arias still denied the truth. Eventually, she cracked. Well, sort of. Arias changed her story. Now she admitted in an interview with the media that she was in fact at Travis's house that day. She claimed that while she was there, two masked intruders broke in and were determined to kill Travis. Investigators, however, didn't buy a single word of it. Let's take a break here and let me share with you my thoughts and perspective on Jodi Arias' constantly changing story. Even when faced with damning evidence, she still diverted all the blame away from herself. She refused to take accountability for her actions, and her ever-changing story during interviews with detectives can be attributed to several factors, such as denial, self-preservation, desperation, manipulation, control, lack of empathy, or lack of remorse, or even a legal strategy. In the notorious Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander case, we witnessed a chilling example of denial and self-preservation. Jodi Arias initially denied her involvement in the gruesome murder of Travis Alexander, attempting to minimize her culpability as a means of self-preservation. Her fear of the consequences that admitting her actions would bring drove her to maintain her innocence in the face of overwhelming evidence, all in the desperate hope of avoiding severe legal consequences. In my opinion, desperation played a pivotal role in this case. Faced with the mountain of incriminating evidence, Jodi Arias resorted to deflecting blame and creating alternative narratives. She clung to her version of events in a desperate bid to avoid the harsh legal consequences that awaited her. This desperate move to protect herself illustrates the extraordinary lengths that some individuals will go to when their backs are up against the wall. The case of Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander also shed light on dark aspects of manipulation and control. Arias, who engaged in toxic behavior, continued to manipulate the truth to maintain a sense of power and control over the situation. For her, admitting guilt was the same as relinquishing control, a situation she was unwilling to accept. Throughout the trial, and legal strategies were employed to create doubt and confusion. The defense provided inconsistent statements with the goal of sowing seeds of reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors and investigations. This legal strategy played a significant role in the unfolding of a high-profile case. One of the most disturbing aspects of the Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander case was the complete lack of empathy or genuine remorse displayed by Arias. Her callousness and inability to accept accountability for her heinous actions served as a stark reminder of the absence of the basic human emotions in some individuals who commit such acts. Now let's get back to the case and discuss some Theories. Police only had one major suspect throughout the entire investigation, and if you guess who that was, it was Jodi Arias. Not every case like this has friends at the beginning suspecting that a crime will occur before it even happens. So the police had a pretty good idea who was behind Travis's passing. To them and most other people involved in the case, it was Arias from the very start. They just needed the evidence and a stronger case against her. Arias spent 4 years after being brought into custody in and out of interrogation rooms and behind bars in jail. The trial finally began on January 2nd, 2013. Arias went into the trial pleading not guilty. The prosecutors presented their evidence and arguments first, including the prints and photographs that linked Arias to the crime. Witnesses testified to Arias' obsessive and often concerning behavior. As expected, a good case was being built against Arias and the defense. After just a couple of weeks, the prosecution rested. Next up was Arias' turn to defend herself. Prosecutors had Arias and the defense team on their heels after those 2 weeks. Arias felt that she had to do something to win the jury back. During the defense's turn to present their arguments and call witnesses, she decided to take the stand herself to make her appeals to the jury. During this time on the stand, Arias would change her story even more. She claimed that Travis was frequently physically violent with her throughout their relationship, and on the day of the crime, she said she had dropped Travis's new camera, the one found in the washer, and that this led to a struggle between the two. However, she stated that she blacked out at the time she ended Travis's life, so she left the details of that part out. As with the other times that Arias changed her story, no one bought it. By the middle of April, the defense had also rested. On May 8th, 4 months after the trial began, and nearly 5 years after Travis lost his life, Jodi Arias was found guilty of first-degree homicide. After a few more days of deliberation, the jury found Arias was eligible to receive capital punishment due to the crime's cruel, hateful, and inhumane nature. However, 2 separate juries both failed to reach an agreement on whether or not she should receive capital punishment for the crime she committed. State law in Arizona at the time prevented a third deliberation on capital punishment, so she received the next highest sentencing possible, life in prison without the possibility of parole. So let's pause here so I can share thoughts on the trial, punishment, and my perspective. The Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander case garnered widespread attention, and perspectives on the case and the appropriate punishment for Jodi Arias varied among the public, legal experts, and commentators. Here are some common perspectives. Many saw the case as a tragic story of murder and betrayal. Travis Alexander's brutal killing, coupled with the revelation of the tumultuous relationship between him and Jodi Arias, evoked strong emotions. Some believed that the severity of the crime warranted a proportional punishment for Arias. There was a considerable debate about whether Jodi Arias acted in self-defense, as she claimed, or if the murder was premeditated. Some individuals sympathized with her, arguing that this was a victim of domestic violence, and she acted to protect herself. Others believed the evidence suggested a calculated and premeditated act and questioned the validity of the self-defense claim. Critics of the media's coverage of the trial argued that it had become sensationalized, with an emphasis on salacious details rather than the legal aspects of the case. Some felt that this distorted the public's perception and understanding of the events, and potentially influencing the opinions of the appropriate punishment for Arias. The case reignited debates about death penalty. Arizona allows for capital punishment, and during the penalty phase of the trial, there were differing opinions on whether Jodi Arias deserved the death penalty or if life sentence without parole was a more fitting punishment. Legal experts and scholars discussed the impact of this case on the legal system. The trial highlighted challenges in high-profile cases, such as media interference and potential influence on the jury. Some called for reforms to address these issues and ensure fair trials in similar circumstances. Given Jodi Arias' behavior and the nature of the crime, there was a call for a thorough psychological evaluation. Some believe that understanding her mental state could provide insight into her motives behind the crime and inform the appropriate punishment. Victim advocates emphasize the need for justice for Travis Alexander and his family. They argue that the focus should remain on the impact of the crime and on the victim of their loved ones, urging a punishment that reflects the severity of the offense. In the end, the jury found Jodi Arias guilty of first-degree murder. They were unable to reach a unanimous decision on the death penalty, leading to a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case continues to be discussed and analyzed with different perspectives on justice and punishment. After the case was settled, Travis's family was given $32,000 in reparations from Arias to help pay for travel and hotel expenses gathered during the trial. Though they have remained private since his passing, there was an outpouring of support from the public since the case went public. His friends published a biography called Our Friend Travis, the Travis Alexander Story, that tells Travis's story from before its tragic ending. Despite a guilty verdict being reached and evidence showing otherwise, there are also supporters of Arias. There are things like social media groups that share a common interest in believing Arias to be innocent and her different alibis to be true. Today, Arias is serving her sentence at Perryville State Women's Prison in Goodyear, Arizona, in a low-security wing of the prison. Arias has publicly maintained her innocence despite her attempts at legally clearing her name, proving unsuccessful. She is no longer available to appear her sentencing, and with that, the case of Travis Alexander has been covered and all stones available have been overturned. The tragic story of a man being betrayed by someone who he once trusted and believed he loved and paying the ultimate price is not one that happens often, but it is one that should be told, both as a cautionary tale and to honor the victim or victims involved. Many people talk about these cases, watch documentaries, and even listen to other podcasters. It can be easy to forget that these victims are not characters in a storybook. Their lives are just as intricate and complex as ours, and they are just as messy as those whose stories go untold. If you take one thing away from the story told today, make sure it's this. It's more than just a story. We are here to highlight the true and true crime. Thanks for stopping by to learn about the Travis Alexander case. Though the circumstances are grim, I'm glad that you took the time to be here and to learn a little bit about this today. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the episode and turn on post notifications to get a heads up when the new episode is up. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.